Hello, I'm reading out of Return to Elysium. This is the life of Joan Grant as Lucina. So it is in ancient Greece and Rome now. She's in Rome. This is 2nd century BC and describes her life. She has just left Elysium and she is in Rome. She's now about 17 or 18. Chapter 4. Son of Mars. To the contentment of Salonius, the next few months included no patients to whom my treatment brought inexpedient changes. Women who had taken lovers and then afflicted their bodies, which they thought had betrayed them into sin, left me reassured. Sometimes I achieved a cure by reminding them that Zeus was unlikely to be intolerant of amorous adventures. Men who could not digest their false pride found the pains of their bellies decrease when I gave them a different standard by which to live. Usually they accepted my judgment only when I had found a way to make them realize that they must choose between physical pain and ethical health. I cured a censor of a paralyzed left hand by telling him that he must either cease wanting to strangle his wife or else send her away. Her banishment caused a minor scandal, but his spectacular recovery, which was attributed to my intervention on his behalf with Artemis, considerably enhanced our reputation. The Romans were too stupid to recognize that I had chosen Artemis because of her aspect, which was said to bring sudden death if provoked to wives. I discovered that it was much more effective to express truth in the form of omens than to explain it in a manner pleasing to the realist. However, as Salonius never failed to insist, we were concerned with results, not with theories. Romans had faith in the remote priestess, yet they had not even had the courtesy to listen to the opinions of Lucina. I played the role they demanded, and was rewarded with a tribute of increasing influence, and its counterpart, which Epicurus recorded on tallies that now wear slips of ivory instead of sheets of discarded papyrus. Salonius never mentioned Cordelia, whom he still considered a regrettable incident, for which my inexperience must demand forgiveness. I never told him that a Lucina, who was an obscure Greek girl from a villa in an unfashionable quarter of the city, frequently went to a certain shop that was gaining a small but substantial fame for the excellence of its baked meats. From Cordelia herself I had heard the story of the daisies of fair omen, and I wished that instead of listening in pretended awe, I could have dared to tell her how grateful I was for this proof that I had not been entirely ineffective in creating happiness. Most of my patients were so determinedly Roman that I had little hope of helping them to become real people. Tribute to the temple increased. Salonius was pleased to let me work with his approval, but without his advice. Only a matter of unusual importance would have made him ask me to come to his house on a certain evening of mild autumn before I went to the temple. "I wish I could have told you before," he said, "but I have only just discovered that the centurion, whom you will see tonight," he paused and then added with emphasis, "is more than a centurion." "Who is he?" "If I were sure I would tell you his name, but it might be any of 3 men of great importance in the affairs of Rome. Sufficient that he comes to you to discover whether the omens are propitious for us to acquire further territory, whether the time has come for the beneficent Rome rule to be extended." "Beneficent?" I said. "You mean that Rome requires more slaves to increase her self-importance?" "I find your Greek cynicism surprising," said Salonius. If it were not for Rome, your own country would have been overrun. We have a mission to extend our influence throughout the known world." "Just as I have a mission," I said in a smooth voice, which I knew would conceal the thought behind the words. "It is good for people to become obedient. Their tribute is a natural expression of their gratitude." He smiled, oblivious to my real meaning. There is no disharmony between us, Lucina. I should have known it was unnecessary for me to warn you that in this case you must read the omens with meticulous care. The lives of legions may depend on your exact interpretation. Surely I was learning to understand human nature. I had thought that Salonius worshipped a realism too wide for Asclepius, but now I realize that he, like nearly all my patients, believed only according to his concept of expediency. The victor of a campaign will bring tribute to Rome, I said. He is unlikely to forget the source of this confidence which made his victories possible. Epicurus had better learn the barter value of the wealth which a people as yet unconquered shall lay as sacrifice on the altars of Rome. We understand each other, Lucina, said Salonius, secure in his confidence. Yes, we understand each other. As I was going out of the room, I asked, as though the question was trivial, do you know which country is to be honoured by our attention? No, he said, surely that is of no real importance. Is it sufficient that it is worthy of 5 legions? I should have liked to decorate the temple with asphodel, the flower of graves, or, as Cleon had once reminded me, a plant which can be used to decontaminate the odour of swine. But it was possible, though unlikely, that the knowledge of the Roman soldier might not be entirely limited by the concerns of strategy. So I made a not unsatisfying arrangement of elecampane, the flower said to have been favoured by Helene of Troy. She launched many ships. Perhaps Lucina could restrain 5 legions. On such occasions, the poppy drink was seldom used. The man of affairs preferred to consult the oracle, as would a minor state official go to his superior to receive further orders. When Iris told me that Lucius had put off from the bank, I took my place to wait for a battle of wits against Roman arrogance. The centurion wore the uniform of a foreign legion, the helmet plume faded and discoloured. I was intended to think that he was a veteran, perhaps to recognize that he had not received the advancement worthy of such arduous service. The sword he unbuckled before he lay down on the couch had a worn blade. The leather of his greaves was knotted where the greasy thongs had frayed. Had I not been warned by Salonius, I might have believed these trivial, careful clues, taking him for a soldier who had fought hard but won no material advancement. Or should I have been deceived? I tried to remember where I had seen that face before, the heavy line of the brow, the hard jaw. Had I seen him at the games, leaning avid over the balustrade of the arena, or in a triumph? The setting was irrelevant. It was sufficient that Lucina knew that somewhere a free people asked her to help them defend the right to live in their own way. Always try to understand the mind of the enemy, only then can you counter his strategy. I had often heard Agamemnon say these words, but now I heard their echo in the stillness of my mind. But was it only an echo? I saw the soldier close his eyes, relax against the pillow of the couch. Iris sat forward on the low stool, the writing tablet ready in her hand. Gradually I became certain that Agamemnon was beside me. For the first time since I had seen his body crumble into ash on the white sands of Elysium, I knew that between us there was a link too strong for any sword to sever. It was not necessary to speak to him aloud. It was natural for him to hear me without sound carrying the words, Agamemnon, I shall not in this hour betray the sword which once was too heavy for us both. The answer was clear. I seemed to hear even the tones of his voice. He acts according to his beliefs, Lucina. He has the same fervour which drives priests to sacrifice on the altars of dark gods. He does not know that Mars grows ever more hungry on the bloodlust of the conqueror. He is loyal, brave, implacable. You will never turn him from his purpose unless you make him believe that through him Rome will suffer. I meant to read his omen in a way which would convince him that the leader of his this army will die of a festering wound in the hour of victory. No, in the hour of defeat. He is a tired man, Lucina. He is dedicated to death in battle. He is afraid only of being the soldier too old to fight for the glory of Rome. He has left himself no alternative spring of life from which to drink. He is not interested in his family, not even in policy or fame. He will take others into death with him unless you can show him there is another way of living. It was becoming more difficult to hear Agamemnon, as though we were two boats which the current was drawing greatly apart. "Don't leave me, Agamemnon." The thought was so urgent that I felt my lips move and looked at Iris to see if I had spoken aloud. She was not writing, only Agamemnon had heard me, and he found it difficult to answer. "Do not hate him, Lucina. Nothing can be accomplished through hatred. He needs your pity. The children of Mars are pitiful. For the father they have chosen is very cruel. If you could make him see the white sword carried by the legions who war with Mars. If you could only make Rome remember the other sword." "What other sword? Agamemnon, answer me, what other sword?" "Not Mars." The words were so tenuous that I was not sure if they were only an echo of something heard very long ago, but I could not hear the source beyond the echo. The centurion spoke in a voice which might have been issuing orders for a battle plan. "I asked the oracle to answer my question in the name of Mars." I knew something else about him. He was not used to consulting oracles, for they were well known to be exceedingly particular that all supplicants approached in a manner of correct humility, but he was confident that Mars viewed him with favour. "Let the question be asked." "It requires the interpretation of a dream. I regret that my orders from Mars are in a code whose key is unknown to me." "Mars is displeased. His orders are not sent save to those who are willing to carry them into action. He wishes you to understand that he is occupied with many affairs. You will repeat your orders faithfully, so that he may discover whether he can entrust you not to distort his commands." In the calm, dispassionate voice of one delivering a message learned exactly the man spoke. I find myself in a tent on the lower slope of a mountain range. I see a wide plain, fertile, for it is coloured by cultivated fields and well wooded. There are two large towns. One is partly surrounded by a wide river. With me are 5 legions. I know that the people whom I have come to enlighten with the wisdom of Rome are not your followers. They are unprepared. This I know, for I have sent spies amongst them and discovered that their cohorts are untrained and their defences neglected. The scene changes. I see a triumph in the streets of Rome. On a bier is carried the sword and helmet of a man who died for his victory. You dedicate your life to Mars, and yet you fear death? I saw his face darken with a suffusion of angry blood. If Mars will ask his scribes to read my record, they will find I have not failed in courage. Mars is pleased that you have learned to keep anger as your slave. The taut line of his mouth relaxed, as may a wrestler who has countered the throw of his opponent. If the boon of death in victory is granted, I need no further reward, he said. I watched the triumph. I saw that the men who wore the blazon of Rome marched proudly, but under the helmet were naked skulls. There were many slaves in our train, men and women and children, who wore chains, gold chains. They were singing. Why should slaves sing before they have learned that it is better to be in bondage to Rome than to claim citizenship of any other country? What did they sing so soon? Why did they sing so soon? Do not your legions sing when they march towards victory? Do they wait until the city is conquered? They sing to keep the rhythm of their march. If their leaders cannot read my omens, they chant only the melancholy of beat of death. The fool's pride of a leader without wisdom is more deadly than 10,000 enemy spears. I have no pride save that conferred upon me by the men I lead. Then interpret my commands, judge well, for the life of Rome depends upon your vision. I cannot, he said desperately. Would I be here asking a woman to act as intermediary if I had not tried for 60 nights to dream again? Remember the dead men who wore your helmets in an empty triumph. Remember the gold chains of the singing people whom you thought Rome had enslaved. Do a people enter into bondage singing? But the chains were gold, a sure sign that I was to bring new wealth to Rome. Do slaves wear gold, or is it the seal of the victors? I saw the gold, I saw so many slaves, more tribute to Rome. You woke too soon. I'm not pleased that you lacked the courtesy to wait until my orders were complete. The heralds woke me, the trumpets that wake the men. We were in a camp when you came to me. Need you tell me that? Is it not more seemly for me to approach the soldier in his tent, rather than on some other occasion when he forgets the dignity of his calling? You had made a sacrifice to me. Would it not have been wiser to order silence for my voice than to allow Mass to be interrupted by the trivial pattern of the little men who make my wars? I knew this challenge was a risk. What if he had not made a sacrifice on the night before the dream? I knew that a vivid memory was far more probable after some definite act that made the mind receptive. But if I was wrong, he might kill me to stop me betraying his plan. He would not be afraid to kill a charlatan. I felt a cold trickle of sweat between my breasts. A sword would be cold. I made the sacrifice. Never again will I doubt that you answer. Never again will I fail in the proper preparations to do you homage. We will show you our clemency. But be not disobedient. I have many enemies to which men are blind. Disease and hunger are among the most implacable. If you had entered this campaign, you would have brought my enemy into Rome. The conquered sang because they knew they brought with them invisible legions which would destroy our city. Slow death disguised as fever. Death to our women. Death to the legions who will protect Rome in future years, unless you slay them in infancy. But the plans are made, the ships are ready, even the stores and horses have been sent to the ports. The Senate has approved. They were at first reluctant, but I made them agree. You will have an opportunity to learn that there are other weapons than the sword by which Rome may be saved from peril. Go to the Senate and acquaint them with my orders, or slay Romans in their thousands and bring weary legions in your train to hear the condemnation of divine displeasure. Fear, doubt, passionate longing to cling to the standards by which he had lived marked his face with a shadow of bitter age. I must dare another throw of the dice, by which the lives of many unknown people would be gained with destiny. I must give him a sign to weigh the balance, and if the sign failed, you will still find it convenient to doubt. Do so at your peril and the lives of those who give to you blind loyalty. His voice was thick with emotion. Give me a sign in clemency for the ignorance of a faithful soldier. Give me a sign. Have pity, whispered Agamemnon. Remember his courage. Remember that he lives according to his faith. You will hear an owl hoot 3 times as you cross the river. You will not betray my orders when you hear my owl. He got to his feet, swaying a little, trying to compose himself. He took up the sword and his fingers fumbled with the unfamiliar buckle. That is not your true sword, I said, but you will find the sword to fight my enemies. I watched him go slowly out of the temple. Iris looked up at me, her face pale with apprehension. You promised him a sign, she said. What will he do when the owl does not fulfill your promise? I gestured to her to be silent. The silver ram's head were cold against my palms. Agamemnon, I said, please make him hear the owl. I heard the owl when you died. Please make him hear the owl. I ran down the path between the young oaks. The river was a dark flood between me and the lights of Rome. There was no wind. The night was very still, as though it shared my listening. I heard an owl hoot, and again it hooted for the 3rd time. Thank you, Agamemnon, oh thank you. And I felt tears running down my face. I dared not forget that Silenus was a Roman. So I concealed that I had deliberately worked in defense of a people threatened by invasion. For the rest, I gave him an accurate account. He found nothing disturbing in my awareness of Agamemnon, and I was grateful that he did not try to pretend it had been an illusion, that the owl had hooted he took as irrefutable proof of the reality of the experience. Neither of us could decide whether it had been a real owl or only a subjective image, projected either by Agamemnon or himself into the field of hearing. "I'm convinced," said Solonius, "that nothing has a physical reality until it has first been created in a more subtle form. If you can effect cures by changing the pattern of a patient's thought, why should you not be able to make him see or hear the vital factor with which you have deceived is part of the essential claim? Is there any substance, however material, which cannot be modified, providing that one fully understands the forces required and how to dispose them? Is this perhaps the logic of creation? I believe, as you do, that ideas are stronger than anyone dare recognize, but I cannot explain the process. I'm afraid that I have very little capacity for belief. I only know, what I have experienced." "Never regret it, Lucina. For one actual fact, there may be 10 plausible theories, of which 9 must be wrong. Keep your empiricism. Leave others to prove the explanation. Keep faith with yourself." So this was the end of this chapter 4. Then chapter 5 is entitled The Soothsayer. It is Thursday, the 16th of November.